Greetings YouTube, this is Western Kansas Prepper here. Maybe gonna get some rain today, not sure, hopefully. Anyway, just wanted to show you my Lazyman's garden is now complete, and I'll show you what I mean. Everything is in that should be in. This is my hose. I've only got one hose outlet for my whole house, so I had to make this do a lot of things. So here's a connector to a timer. This is an Orbitz brand timer. You get them at Walmart. They're about 20 something bucks. I used this one all last year. Had some batteries in there. It still works. The same batteries work, so it's working fine. But I set this to go off in the morning. I can show you here. Starts at 4:10 a.m. Goes for about 30 minutes and goes twice a day. That's when it's going to be real bright and sunny here. If not, I'll probably turn it off, especially if we're getting rain like today. This hose goes all the way out to the yard, where I have a sprinkler attached in the backyard, which I will unscrew and be able to use as a hand sprayer for different stuff. This one goes in the front yard to my sprinkler in the front yard. I'm actually trying to have a viable, decent looking front yard this year, unlike last year where it just all died. So, onto the garden. But again, that timer prevents me from having to come out here and self-water all the time. Over here, this is going to be my corn. It's all planted, and there's a soaker hose that is laid out that will be functional once the corn starts to come up. Over here, got my tomatoes going. This rose bush is doing obviously very well, but tomatoes there with soaker hoses. The weed blocker fabric is down, keeping any weeds from growing in the middle, although you see them creeping in at the edges. Something I always have to deal with. If anybody's got a good tip on getting rid of Bermuda grass while you're growing a garden, I'd like to hear it, because it sucks. It is always around. Anyway, I mean, it makes my yard look good, especially my front yard. There's some more tomato plants there and there and there. And again, I got some ivy growing, but other than that, I think it's doing fine. So, those are those Chinese elms. They help me as a wind barrier. They're a very invasive species, but I try to keep them chopped and keep them from spreading. Then I've got another hose junction down here. This one splits it off into my various soaker hoses. I can have them going simultaneously, or I can shut them off one at a time to make the stream more powerful. And here, you see my potatoes are starting to come up a little bit. So those potato plants are coming up pretty good. Actually, those just popped up in the last week and a half. I mean, those were tiny. They were like this big last week. Now they're huge. There's another one hiding under here. This lettuce is obviously ready to be harvested. Onions are doing good. Pepper plants are just coming up. Cucumbers are just popping out of the ground. I just planted those. This one's starting to flourish a little bit. And of course the rest of my radishes are doing good. Lettuce. Something I will have to, a couple things. I did thin these out a little bit. I can probably thin them out a little more. For radishes especially, you need to thin them. You can see there the leaves are more chewed on than my lettuce that's sitting right next to it. Radish is a trap plant. That means that other bugs love radishes, so they'll come after those as opposed to your other crops. Even if you don't like radishes, I would suggest you plant some on the periphery of your garden, just to give the bugs an alternative to chewing up what you actually like. So, I actually had some spare radish seeds there. I'm just throwing in the ground right there, hoping that they'll work out well. Found a piece of rock here. I'm going to lay this on this cardboard. I'm going to throw some cardboard down to keep this Bermuda grass from spreading too good. Here's some of that prickly lettuce I did a video on earlier. I really don't want it in my garden back here, so I'm going to pull that up. The easiest way to pull it up is from the very bottom. Came right up. This is not a real strong one. You really don't want to let this stuff go to seed, or you'll have it everywhere. But there's several of them back here, and they eat up a lot of water, so I don't want them in my garden. I don't mind them in my yard a little bit. I'm going to eat them in salads and stuff, but I don't like them in my garden. There, and then they're all pretty much gone. That's all of them. They came out of the ground easier than they usually do. And got some lettuce, or some ivy creeping along here. Gotta get that out. Pretty much the only thing you got to do on this Lazyman's garden, because the weed fabric is going to, the weed block is going to do everything in the middle of the garden. You just got to keep the periphery from getting overrun. But one other thing you got to do, because I've got my soaker roses all laid out across this. Soaker roses will do the job, but one thing you got to be careful for, like look at my Swiss chard here. Some bugs have been taking a bite out of that. That one too. Not much. I don't like spraying lettuces with insecticides or anything. Other plants that you're not going to harvest right away, it's fine. But those I won't do that. But one reason I have an attachment for a hand sprayer is because you do need to come out here every once in a while and blast those, blast the foliage pretty good with water to get off all the aphids and whatever else may be on them. The soaker roses will soak them from the bottom, but they depend on that water on their leaves to keep the other types of predatory insects off of them. So I have a little more space here in the middle to do something with. Probably put some beans in there. It's about the only thing left I had to do. Everything else is up and going. I actually started a new little plot over here behind my shed, which is not usually a place I garden, but I guess I let a bunch of stuff decompose last year back here, and the soil looked really good. So planted tomato back here, cherry tomato. I did not want to plant it next to my regular tomatoes over there because they can interpollinate and crossbreed and makes your regular tomatoes smaller. So don't do that. I learned that the hard way too. That's the thing about gardening, you know, if you're planning on relying on a SHTF garden, what did I say? Then you know you really need to do a garden a few years where you're planning on living, because you learn what works and what doesn't. And one other thing I learned about my garden, you know, last couple of years, I mean, I was buying seeds, different types of lettuce, you know, and what I've learned is that certain lettuce doesn't do very well in Kansas because it bolts too fast. It shoots up, gets bitter, and seeds. So you really need to get bolt-resistant varieties. And that may be true over a lot of the country, but some places probably don't need to do that. But those are the types of little tips you need. Probably need to fail a couple of times, see your lettuce shoot up to 4 feet tall and wonder what's going on with it a couple of times before you, so you know that's a mistake and you know how to correct it. So that's pretty much my garden now. I've got a few herbs that are inside. I'm still working on growing one lingering tomato plants inside. Pretty much what's going to be in my garden is in there now. I'm going to fertilize it, but not today because it might rain. I'll wait till it's a little dried off so that the fertilizer can soak directly in the roots. So not today. See, I've still got a few herbs up here and stuff. They're still going okay. Got some parsley, some oregano. Some other little kits here, like this basil. That's the tomato plant. That's basil, and I think that's cilantro coming up. Anyway, that's where I'm at though. So right now all I can harvest is lettuce to actually eat, but soon I'll have some other things to do. So Western Kansas Prepper signing off.